Welcome to it. Sunday Live is here. The Average Joe Sports Show. Find, like, and subscribe on YouTube. The Average Joe Sports Show. Spotify and iTunes for the digital download. The AJ Sports Pod for Twitter. He is thought out. Gary Sharp, the Iron Horse, with us. The Pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman. Bill, where are you at? You got a little...
an igloo.
Okay. Bill is ice fishing without a hat, a pole, or a six-pack. Elijah is warmed up. Are you fireside, big cat, Elijah?
No. My cat's right in front of me, so she's hanging out here. Nothing too exciting. Hanging out at home. Looking forward to Husker basketball and playoff football.
You're it.
In that order.
Yeah. You are it. Chris Schmidt with you. And Sunday Live, we appreciate you checking in. We'll give some shout outs here on the stream in a moment, but not a ton of football news, but more the waiting game, fellas, that we'll dive into. Husker basketball, pretty big ball game today for Nebraska. How do they respond after a 3-game slide? And playoff football gets going here in just a little bit. Sharpie, I want to kind of get your take. The old Kansas City Chiefs pass rush was fast and furious yesterday. 8 total sacks for the Chiefs, and it's got a little Husker attachment to it. How was that experience, man? Good time?
It's great. You know what? I have never lost an Arrowhead as a playoff viewer. So They've invited me back for next week. So I'll be there for the 5:30 kickoff. I mean, it's it was a strange game.
A little bit.
It's I don't think it was controversial. I mean, everybody's knocking the Chiefs on how they play and, calls that go against them or not. I mean, maybe it was a little inappropriate that the official went up and tapped Fairbairn a couple of times and said, hey, if you could yank this field goal attempt, if you could yank this PAT, that'd be great. When you guys probably didn't see it on TV, when the officials were all hanging out, the Chiefs equipment staff brought out Chiefs coats they could wear during the timeout so they would stay warm. You know what? Looking at last night's game between Detroit and Washington, I'm ready for all the tears. Bring the tears, all right? You guys bring all the tears you want. I'm set for it. You know what? We may not win next week, but we're on a hell of a run. 6 or 7 years they've hosted the AFC Championship game. But they just win, and their defense, so they're not as prolific offensively consistently, but Mahomes has played really, really well over the last 6-7 games. Defensively, they've been incredible. And it further reiterates, like, Steve Spagnuolo should be in the Hall of Fame as a defensive coordinator. And I've thought that for a while. And what they dialed up yesterday, his front was relentless. And Houston's a really good team. Houston's going to be good. And C.J. Stroud's going to be good. But they got to get him some offensive line help. Man, he got crushed yesterday, even on good plays. So it's a win. They move on. And I would rather have Buffalo than Baltimore because I think Baltimore is the only team that can win an Arrowhead.
Well, and as a guy who yesterday on our Hail Varsity Radio Saturday morning show openly admitted you got to root for the Texans if you want Terry Braden to make it to Lincoln as fast as possible. I said that. I'll stand by that. I was rooting for the Texans for that reason and that reason alone. People complain about the refs. It wasn't the refs that lost that game for the Texans. It was the special teams. The special teams was gross from the Houston Texans yesterday. If you clean that up, despite all the sacks, despite C.J. Stroud running for his life, limping off the field every single possession, you're in that ball game. If you just hit your field goals, don't get one blocked, don't let that kickoff return happen to start the game. It's all special teams. That's where it went wrong for the Texans.
Also,
if.
Yeah. I think, like yesterday, like, this is football. We there's so much to football that we love and we break down and we like throw out big words, and all of a sudden we're enamored with the RPO and we run that phrase about 3 years into the ground. Football is simply because, like, looking at the Lions Commanders game and the way the Chiefs played and how tomorrow night's going to be played in Atlanta. If you just stake with your identity, you got a pretty good shot to be successful. It's in tight games where all of a sudden you start doing things that are uncommon. I know that Detroit, went for fourth down and they continued all that stuff, but putting an important play in the hands of Jamison Williams. Like things you don't normally do in tight situations. Washington did the same thing. I look at last night, or I look at tomorrow night. Ohio State, they did things that's not their identity against Michigan, and they didn't have to. They didn't have to, all of a sudden go, hey, we got the biggest brain in the room. You know what? Sometimes you got the best talent. Use it. Football is at the end of the day pretty simple. And I think sometimes coaches get in their way and they overthink it because they want to be the smartest person in the room. And I think Kansas City is flawed. Okay, this is not the vintage Kansas City team. And I am, I do think next week is going to be extremely tough. And I never take for granted what they've been able to do, but they never overthink things. The playoffs, who plays well in the playoffs? Mahomes and Kelsey. Okay. They put Travis on a kind of a pitch count all season long because they knew when he got to this point and with the extra rest, he would be ready to go. Those guys are magic in the playoffs. They don't overthink it. They go and find that combo. So that's just, I think we're going to see today which coach will be the first to overthink and get out of their identity. It happens a lot more in college than the NFL, but man, it sure does come back to bite you.
You're right about the game being simple. And in watching the game yesterday, it just reiterated to me, as it has for the past, 50 plus years of watching football, it comes down to line play. If you have an offensive line that can protect your quarterback a little bit, you give yourself a chance. But it was like at some point, Steve Spagnuolo and that Kansas City defense just decided, when it was almost like William Wallace in Braveheart, hold, and now let's unleash the blitz in the second half. Because once they started, really emphasizing the pressure, and I'm not going to say they blitzed every play, but the more pressure they applied, they just continued to onslaught on CJ Stroud, and he had no chance. The first half, it looked like a fairly competitive game, and I think you would say that the first half, despite the fact that Houston trailed, I think Houston, for the most part, outplayed Kansas City. But in the second half, after the hold was done, it was just unleash hell. I mean, let's go to another movie. But it's just the simplicity of if you have a great offensive line, you give yourself a chance. I also appreciated the way Kansas City came up with this gimmick play where they utilized the tight end, number 87, I think, and he would run down and he would get open about 10, 15 yards downfield, and the quarterback would throw the ball to him. It's like that like Kansas City invented something new yesterday that Houston had never seen before, reminding me of the 94 Nebraska-Colorado game when Nebraska completed 9 passes to tight ends and Bill McCartney thought it was a trick play. Like, did Houston not watch any film of the last 10 years of Kansas City Chiefs football that number 87 goes downfield, sits there 15 yards down there, and Mahomes throws it to him? It was like they'd never seen it before. Simple play.
Well, old Aikman lost his mind about how open Kelsey got. Let's do some shout outs this morning. Stephen in. Captain is here. Captain, good to have you. Kobe says, let's have a day. Black Hills Brennan, good to have you, dude. Anonymous is here. Walter from South Philly. Brian Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, says, how many threes does Maryland make today?
Not as many as the last 3 games.
Thank you. That's an optimistic look. You have Mike checking in.
If they do hit a 23, dear God, that's
if they do, just stay in our nation's capital. Okay.
Or up a double shot, something like that.
Or near. Brandon here. Good to have you, Brandon. And Brent also checking in. So Brian says, what's up? And asked the question here. So he's asking about retirement for IGC. We'll get to some portal news, but let's talk hoops for a second. How's
Remember
that sound?
him?
Yeah, but portal bound. But when we
is he the only guy in Nebraska football history to twice be in the portal?
No, because you had Butler. Butler went into the portal initially and then pulled out and went back in. So How are we feeling here? I got hit up for my YouTube TV password because Mama and Junior are going to exile themselves to the basement to watch Michigan State in Illinois because I am trying to commandeer the other TV for Nebraska, Maryland on BTN. But yeah, the home game win streak snapped this week. You've had things kind of be more normal from a favorite versus an upset so far this weekend in the Big Ten. And you have a Maryland team that right now at 13-5 and a game under 500, they're coming off a tough one at the buzzer at Northwestern. So can Nebraska just do simple? That's kind of been the theme of the show so far. Can Nebraska do simple better, and can they make some tweaks defensively? A lot of talent, a lot of athleticism with Maryland guys.
Well, Nebraska's got to play, city league ball. They've got to play the way, Fred Hoiberg designed this team to play. And it's got to be defense, and it's got to be effort. And what we saw at Michigan State, 4 weeks ago now, and what happened at Purdue last weekend was not the all-out floor burn and beat your team up. I mean, they've allowed too many teams recently to score too many points and not give an effort. And Nebraska can't get into an up and down game. Not that I would expect that with Maryland, but if Nebraska loses its identity in terms of playing a rugged defensive game and challenging shots, and my God, make some free throws and some bunnies. And but if it's the same kind of lazy Sunday morning effort like we saw at Purdue, it's just defensively, it's just not going to happen again today.
Yeah, I think their communication is big today. Maryland doesn't live and die with the three, but they do shoot it pretty well. They're about 36%. Nebraska needs to they got to play with a lot of energy, but they also have to have good communication on rotations and closeouts. And then the other problem here today is going to be rebounding. Maryland's pretty good on the boards, and they got Reese and Queen, and they get on the offensive glass. So, you look against Rutgers. It was not only, as Bill was alluding to, missed layups, you missed free throws, but look at the offensive rebounds. I mean, Rutgers crashed the glass, and it's not like they had a huge advantage on Nebraska in terms of size. They got 17 offensive rebounds. They had 19 second chance points. So that actually, to me, winning the battle on the boards is going to be more important than what happens out beyond the arc. But I think Nebraska needs a good start on the road. I don't think they can fall behind like they did last Sunday and come back. But I think at this point, not a lot of people are expecting a lot out of Nebraska. I mean, it's going to be a tough game. They're a 9.5-point underdog. But I think we kind of at this point want to just see them be competitive. All right. Quit. Yeah. If today looks like the last 4 games, then I think you have to ask the question, how serious is this team in being a team that's going to play in March? So I just want a competitive game. I want them to get to the under 8 or under 4 in the second half, and they still have a chance to maybe steal a game on the road.
Well, look, they've gotten up early in the 2 of the last 3 games. I mean, they lead by 15 at Iowa on the road, and they lead by 9 against Rutgers. I mean, they have the ability to get up. It's just not staying up. And I'm beginning to think as we move into the middle of January, is this going to be a season like last year to be enjoyed or just endured? And how exasperated and exhausted are we going to be when this season is finally over? Last year was an enjoyable season. Yeah, you had competitive games every night out, win or lose for the most part, and it was enjoyable to watch. But man, this just endurance right now.
Well, you look at the upcoming stretch. It sucks. Rough upcoming stretch. I think we hit that on Friday just a little bit. But dare I go full degenerate and just say, hey, if they cover today, it's a win. I mean, 9.5 points is the line. Gary said keep it competitive. I kind of feel the same way. The way you've gotten the doors blown off of you consistently when you go on the road, especially on a weekend and especially on a morning in the weekend, like cover the 9.5 and I'll feel all right about this team. I think they can. It's a Maryland team that emphasizes the post a little bit. Nebraska has that collapsing defense where once you get inside, they collapse down and make it really hard. The matchup might set up all right for them. But the problem is it's a weekend road trip in the morning, and that has not gone well for Nebraska dating back about 2 years. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I think if you cover that 9.5, I'd feel good about the performance.
And Fred is, what is he, 5-41 in the Big Ten on the road, and I think the average margin is 16 points.
Mm-hmm.
So I bring that up just to probably go back to Thursday night when it stings when you have a very winnable game at home and you can't get it because you know what is ahead of you. Now, if I wonder how many tweaks to the rotation happen. Like, what is the closing lineup look on the floor? What does the starting lineup moving forward look like if they make some tweaks? If there is like a saving grace about this team, and the schedule towards the back end seems to be more manageable. Fred's teams of late have gotten better later in the season. So if they can somehow get through this little stretch here, and remember, Ken Pom, starting with UCLA, said they lose 6 of 8 and still make the tournament. Well, they have won against UCLA, and they promptly lost 3 in a row. Mm-hmm. So if he cannot call out his team and they don't respond, and you're like, oh, we're screwed now, and keep guys together with all the flaws that they have and kind of hide some of them, then maybe they can use the Big Ten to be one of the last teams into the tournament if they can get back to playing above average basketball with the record at the tail end of the season, starting when we get to February. But they got to get through. I mean, there's Illinois, there's Oregon on the horizon, there's USC coming up next. It's the Big Ten. It doesn't get any easier.
Well, I mean, Fred's got to go double duty here, not only as head coach, but also as psychologist because of this stretch you touched on. I mean, it's not just a Nebraska thing. You put a lot of teams in this schedule component that Nebraska's facing, and I'm not crying for Nebraska. That's the price of doing business in a Power 5 league. So you better be able to adapt or you're going to die. What Fred needs to continue to reinforce to them is, all right, the playing hard part with kind of this 2.0 version of Fred's vision for Nebraska ball's not been a problem, but the playing tough part. And he's been around it enough. He knows guys' personalities enough that he says things with, and he's not going full Saban in the press conference, but he communicates, and he's right with what the next step needs to be. You want to win some ball games. You want to be competitive. You want to keep me and Elijah from running to the sports book to lay to lay the points. You got to play tough, and this is a great test, right? Because Reese and McQueen are dudes that are going to want to find their way into the paint. And they're absolutely going to want to hip check you into the third row, battling for an offensive rebound. So. If you're Mia, how do you respond down low? If you're a Burke, right, you figure out your game a little bit. If you're Sejan, you got to be big today. And more importantly, man, as good as he is, Bryce Williams, super talent. Love watching him ball. You got to be stronger with a basketball, dude, especially when you're going into contact and traffic. And if you're going to take a shot, your little mid-range is money, but find a way to get to the rim. Find a way to get that hex, that free throw situation fixed, because you've been really good. It's how you won the UCLA game. And lastly, Juwan Gary, dude, you're the heart and soul of this basketball team. You're the barometer. Less threes, more drive to the rim, get to the line, or figure out how to posterize somebody a couple of times today. Get to the rim, come with an attitude, because you've got the ability to do it.
So if there is a place where Nebraska is going to steal a road game, it will happen today, because I will tell you this. So I think we'll find out right away if Fred touched the third rail on this team and if they responded. And this feels like a game where Bryce Williams just takes over. Now, that doesn't mean, if he scores 30, somebody else gets 20. But there's the other part of playing at Maryland, and they're 11-1 at home, is if there's been one university that's been more impacted and a sport more impacted, we always talk about Nebraska baseball going from the Big 12 to the Big 10 and how much of an impact it had. It's Maryland basketball. Maryland basketball was ACC. They were playing Duke. They were playing Carolina. They had those built-in rivalries. I don't know how much games you guys have watched when Nebraska's not playing out in College Park, but that place is not full. It doesn't feel like Maryland basketball that we grew up on with Len Bias to Lefty Drizel and that national championship team, within the last couple of decades. So it's a noon game on a Sunday. Remember, who also won last night? There's probably a lot of people that are hungover. Okay, they're not thinking basketball. They're thinking about football. You also have Baltimore. The Ravens are playing afterwards. So it could be a little sleepy in there. So if I think if Nebraska's going to steal a road game, there's a little bit of a recipe to do it in that atmosphere. But Nebraska's got to be this is about Nebraska today.
And there's also something else going on in the area tomorrow that has
TikTok's coming back, Bill.
TikTok's coming back.
Does Trump become officially the president tonight at midnight, or does he have to wait to put his hand on the Bible? Because I need my TikTok back.
You are Jones and Sharpie. You and Carson Jr. was freaking out on the way home last night. Oh my God, it's not working.
Hey, apparently it's one of the first things being signed on Monday, so life can get back to normal. But let's face it, there's other things going on in DC this weekend that might have people's attention elsewhere as well. Getting back to Elijah's degenerate comment, the only people who will be excited with Nebraska in March around the committee room will the people who are getting the points today. Covering does not matter to the NCAA tournament committee. If Nebraska gets beat by 9 or 19 or whatever today, it's still a loss. And if we're talking about them playing in March, it doesn't matter cover or not. That's just a Vegas thing. They got to win. They got to have lots of wins and not worry about covering. Make some free throws. And I agree. Bryce Williams needs to be much more, I think, more of an alpha than he plays within himself, but I think he needs to be a little bit more alpha. The Rutgers game exposed that in the last minute and a half or 3 minutes of the game when he had an opportunity to take over, not necessarily take over, but to take shots, right?
The only shot he got though was that desperation three. Find him. I don't care if they're sticking 4 guys on him. Find him or find who's open, and they gotta not jack around so much, dribbling around or look lost in those winning time moments. Lastly, on Jawan Gary, he talked about the hurt, right? The hurt with Ace Bailey talking about how we want it more. Well, he shared that in the post game the other night, and he's there's a chance to do something about it. I don't know if they win today. They need to play their ass off today, and if they lose to a better team, so be it, but they need to make sure Maryland knows they were there, and they need to get back to that high level effort thing and intensity. This could be a step in the right direction, whether they win or lose, for future opportunities. Because I don't think many of us had this thing circled as a win before their skid. I think we all thought today was going to be a pretty tough ball game just because of Maryland's ability in the paint.
Well, I think you look at it and it's not a top 25 team on the road. Maryland's solid. It's gettable, but we all know Nebraska's road struggles. Like, I'm with you. I know Bill doesn't care about the cover. I think a moral victory would be good for this basketball team right now.
Just look competitive. It's stupid. It sucks, but look competitive. Look like you're in it.
There is something to getting the monkey off your back, whereas, as Gary said, it's a close ball game down the stretch and you're in it. And even if you don't get the win, there is something to just, it's been perplexing, the road struggles for Nebraska basketball, just how different it's been. You do have a bit of a moral victory factor if you're playing a good basketball game down the stretch and you have a chance to go win it, even if you don't go get it done. But it would be great. It would be great to see Nebraska get a road victory, and I'm sure Gary saw this. Maybe see Fred Hoiberg go ballistic on a trash can in the locker room after the game. That'd be great to see.
Hey, that team that goes ballistic on a trash can after a game is 5-0 in the Summit.
I love it. Let's talk a little Husker football, not basketball. We've already covered that. It's the Average Joe Sports Show, episode 86. Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp, Elijah Herbel, Chris Schmidt. Like and subscribe. The Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube. Keep those subscription numbers going upward. Spotify, iTunes, where you can have us. Game Dog says there's no moral victory when your coach publicly calls you soft. Well, go Get them elbows extended, right?
Hey, before we go to football, how about Mick Cronin? I mean, his press conferences the last 2 weeks since the Nebraska loss. I don't know how he has guys show up for practice. And I know that there's a lot of bad stuff going on in LA, but he seems to be a little insensitive to that. But wow, I cannot recall a coach calling out his players so consistently, so publicly, and so negatively. I mean, I really can't think of anybody in recent years or
they're
decades.
Nice kids. They're delusional. No one
soft. I can't be the toughest person at practice every day.
Well, so
you better get the results.
You know what? Stop bitching. Okay. Maybe take some accountability for your team not playing well. Okay. Maybe not attack a reporter who is asking an honest question. Okay. You know what? Also, maybe get up this morning out there in Los Angeles, Mick, and look at what Dan Campbell did after their loss last night. D'Amico Ryans, look what Dan Campbell did after their loss last night. He said it's my fault.
Me.
It's on me. Thank you.
That's why I just cannot recall. Sometimes, look, airing out once, and I didn't think anything was over the line with the Nebraska UCLA game. I mean, he was not complimentary to anybody. He was in a foul mood, but it's just gotten more, I don't want to say vitriolic because he's been so level-headed and cool about the way that he's done it. And I'm not sure Jay Billis needs to be weighing in and criticizing him. It's his team, but just consistently for a couple of weeks now, just being unhappy about everything. It's like he's calling Chip Kelly and saying, hey, does Ryan Day have a spot on his staff there so I can be an assistant coach and get out of here like you did?
I get coaches hating their team, but you recruited them, dude. I mean, you brought them in. It's on you. Don't be fooled by the talent over the other baggage that comes with that you may not like.
And that's the tricky part today of coaches and roster construction of the high school kid versus the one and done. The guy that you just got off the free agency wire. How do you blend that to you get everybody hanging in the same direction? I don't know. He hasn't lost his team. I mean, they've got, I thought they were done after Rutgers on Monday night and they came back and, Iowa right now can't guard the three of us or the four of us.
That's kind of you.
Yeah, I took myself out of it. So he hasn't completely lost their locker room, but I mean, I don't know. There are coaches that probably are looking at Mick Cronin going, yeah, I know what you're saying, coach, this day and age, but you know what? You did it to yourself. Okay. Figure it out. Quit complaining to us through the media about your team. All right. Do your job. And, nowadays, who the hell knows? The portal doesn't exist according to the NCAA. Guys could just say, I'm out. I'm checking academic calendars around the country. Oh, I can go and enroll in that school. I mean, guys, we're going to celebrate what I think has been a good playoff for the first year tomorrow night. And it might be a blowout and people will be like, we got some issues with college athletics, man. The guardrails are gone. It is the wild, wild west. We are supposed to have revenue sharing, which is coming. The NCAA has thrown their hands in the air. There's no portal. We could have guys could play 5 years and 5. Junior college players that are in school right now can get another 2. I mean, it's a friggin' wild, wild west. And you're wondering why coaches don't want to coach in college and they're looking at the NFL.
It's beyond a control thing anymore. It's beyond I'm the boss, do what I say. When I say jump, you ask how high. It's beyond that now, and it is really taxing on control freaks that are used to having their demands met, and they don't really know how to change, and a lot of them don't want to change. So you're going to continue to see folks look elsewhere for employment, be it at the basketball level or college football level. You mentioned when it comes to eligibility, want to get a thought here on Deshaun Singleton coming back as we go to football, fellas. I think it's a nice addition or retention. You have MGK that's going to end up staying at Arizona. And while the guy's talent and ceiling for that talent was super high, you had the history of changing venues every year or every 3 months in some instances. So I think that's good for Nebraska to be able to keep a guy like Singleton and continue to build this defense here in year one under Butler.
Well, quickly here, it's sloppy early in College Park for anyone who's following along. The arena is.
Oh, Jawan.
I mean, there's more empty seats than fans. It's been 2 turnovers to start the game for Nebraska. It's sloppy in College Park.
Thank you for that reminder. I'm going to turn it on now. Do I need to?
You don't have to.
Is there a parental advisory here with what happened? Because everyone's losing their mind here on Jawan. What happened? You missed a dunk or something?
No, he took a bad corner 3.
Lauren didn't hit anything?
Yeah, well, yeah, kind of think it grazed the side of the rim.
Oh, those.
They're down 3-0. They hit a straight. Maryland hit a straight on 3. And now they're going to
nobody was hurt. Nobody was hurt in the attempting of Juwan Gary's 3.
Well,
that's hilarious because nobody was there.
Bear K knocked down a 3. Bear K knocked down a 3. I don't know.
Oh, so you're a little bit behind me.
I'm a little behind you?
No, you're a little ahead of me. I mean, you got 3-3? Yeah, here's Bear K's 3 right now on my TV, 3-3.
Oh, 6-3 now, Maryland. I'm not sure if
they're off to a 2-for-2 start from beyond.
I'm not on YouTube TV. I am on regular cable TV. I got the Cox.
Well, I found a little what? I found a little hack. Thank you. I found a little hack with YouTube TV where you can decrease the broadcast delay. For anyone out there listening, YouTube TV actually increases the broadcast delay in order to help with buffering and whatnot. So you can go into your little settings and turn down the broadcast delay and get it closer to real time. There's your fun fact for the day.
Public service announcement on the Average Joe Sports Show. All right.
How many of us still have cable versus streaming?
Well, I have both. So I have the main TV is on cable, but then in a couple other TVs are on the YouTube. It's a complicated thing. We don't have time for it. Nebraska's down 6-5.
We don't have time for it.
But there are empty seats. Again, back to the point.
Go ahead.
The move to the Big Ten for hoops at Maryland sucks because we remember them as an ACC school where that place was packed. I know it's Nebraska. I know it's Sunday. The Commanders played last night. The Ravens play a little bit later. There's maybe Muehlheisen on the radio apparently said they counted him and Kent counted, and there's maybe 4,000 people that are there for a Big Ten basketball game. And it's not like the weather's cold in College Park, but it's not like there's snow and you can't get to the arena.
Yeah.
Mike chimes in and calls us the Average Joe's basketball announcement show. Well, quickly, I know
we're gonna have to go basketball on this announcement. Bold move, Cotton. Yeah,
I do know Schmidt was trying to take this to Husker football with the Sean Singleton. I do want to say we've mentioned the Commanders-Lions game a couple times today, and we talked about Dan Campbell saying this is my fault. Last night was Jared Goff's fault, right? Like, if you're the Lions, you got to move on from him this offseason. That's been weighing on me for 12 hours now. That was his problem whenever he played for the Rams. He couldn't get it done in the postseason. He had good regular seasons, but couldn't get it done in the postseason. He goes to the Lions. It's the same issue. And what happened in that Super Bowl, Schmitty? He was terrible.
They got rocked. I mean, it was 13-3, wasn't it? I mean, I bet it wasn't even that close. It was the worst Super Bowl ever. But no, I mean, Goff is. I mean, the guy's numbers are nuts. 40 plus touchdowns. 4,000. Almost 5,000 yards throwing. Nice alley-oop attempt, Mia. That went sideways. So I don't know. I don't know if you move on from him, but you just got to be.
You know what I'm doing?
You got to be yourself, like Sharpie was talking about early on in the show. I mean, don't veer off from what worked for you. And you have J-Mo throwing a trick play that screwed things up.
You know what I'm doing if I'm the Lions?
Get a defense.
There's two options here. They have a defense. It was injured this year. That sucks. I'm calling up the Los Angeles Rams and asking, hey, what's it take to get us Matt Stafford back? That's what I'm doing.
Whoa.
You break out of jail after 4,000 years in Detroit?
Okay.
No.
Or the secondary option is to endure losses in the postseason for the next 2 years and tank for Dylan Raiola. Because Dylan was at that game last night. I'm not sure if you guys saw that. He was in Detroit watching. Could be a good full circle moment to go get Dylan Raiola. Maybe I'm ahead of myself here. But I call up the Rams and I go get Matt Stafford back in Detroit.
Hey, Goff may have hit his ceiling. They turned the ball over too many times last night, and Washington played great, but injuries derailed that Detroit team. I mean, that was their best opportunity because they might lose, and they'll probably lose both of their coordinators. But come on, I mean, it's I feel bad for the Lions fans because this was their year and they've struggled. But I'm not blowing up that roster. I mean, that roster, I don't know what area you're going to improve on that you could improve through the draft or a free agent pickup. That's a really good roster that was besieged by injuries. And then you lose a really good player in the middle of the game. And you got beat by a guy who Daniels now sets the standard for rookie quarterbacks moving forward.
He's awesome. He is.
Well, and I'm not saying blow up the roster. I'm saying blow up the quarterback room. That's what I'm doing if I'm the Lions GM personally.
Hey, look, they move on from Jared Goff, and you've got Teddy Bridgewater right there waiting.
Good for Teddy still being in the league.
Just trade Dan Campbell to Tennessee for their number 1 pick, and then take Cam Ward. Throw in Jared Goff. Throw in one of the Fords. Throw in a vehicle.
Yeah.
Throw in a kneecap.
EV or no?
The other thought is you go get Dak Prescott, but I don't think that eliminates the issue of having a quarterback that sucks in the postseason. So,
or in the regular season.
Wow. Where do you want to go from here?
All right, Schmitty, Husker football.
Yeah, football. Singleton.
Wow, this is a weird. Can I say one quick thing? This is kind of an odd lineup on the floor, but I might learn to like this. Wooster, Asijan, Bryce Williams, Morgan, and Berkay. So there's 4 shooters essentially on the floor, what you would identify as 4 shooters right now. And no. Okay. All right, continue on.
And not a lot of melanin.
Here's the question. And I don't know how many more
Sundays are out there playing on the East Coast.
Sunday morning. I don't know how many more Sunday morning kind of live shows we have that cross over with Nebraska basketball. But damn it, should we have a Husker bingo card and a shot glass? I mean, should we get really into this? Where something on the bingo? No,
because I got things to do today, and I don't want to be hammered by 1
by noon.
I love the restraint. Okay. Cortez Mills. Let's talk Cortez Mills for a moment. And question I've got for the room is impact. What are you asking him to do this freshman season? You've got a laundry list of dudes coming into the receiver room. You love his talent. Another big win from the state of Florida. Impact. Do you think he's a guy that is periphery for this first season, or is he an immediate playmaker for you? I think you give him the opportunity to put his stamp on it if he's ready to rock and roll. But I'm curious here. Sharpie, I'll start with you.
I think any freshman that comes in has
to be good to go.
Got to be good to go. I mean, we're not redshirting anymore, and you completely turned over the wide receiver and defensive back room for the most part, more on the wide receiver room, but Nebraska. So the turn here, like if you look at recruiting classes, Nebraska needs to start hitting on the top of the recruiting class. It's kind of been, they do a good job in the middle and the bottom, but their 4 or 5 top guys either don't stay or don't hit. So they got their top guy last year, became a starting quarterback. So you would say initially that's a hit, and you hope that he plays better than his recruiting ranking coming in. Mills is at the top of this recruiting class. So get him on the field. I mean, he's played against high-level competition. I think they will have a lot of options at wide receiver, but what I like about the wide receiver and defensive back room in the spring and into the summer and into the fall camp, they're going to be some great competition. I mean, they're going to make guys better. Iron sharpens iron. You know that line? They have recruited themselves into options at wide receiver and defensive back so that they won't get caught with their pants down this year if some guy is not performing. The bench, I think, will be more prevalent for guys that are underperforming this year than it was last year because they didn't recruit themselves or construct themselves into options.
It's interesting on those two positions, defensive back and receiver, you have new coaches. So in this this era and going into the spring where so many people are starting to talk about Nebraska spring season being like the NFL and being a training camp and you're going to have cuts, which everybody knows there's going to be cuts, but to have two new coaches in the system and one of them, Shorts in the receiver room, has two of his guys joining it. But Nebraska has a bona fide playmaker in Ja'Cory Barney, who was arguably the best offensive player Nebraska had last year. He's going to be, receiver one because he and Raiola are best buddies, and he's that good. But I think Cortez Mills could have a chance to, give Nebraska two Florida options right there at 1 and 2, depending on how good Dane Key is and the other young guy from Kentucky. And you all know there's going to be a message from Dad, and that being Dana Holgerson, that if you're going to be on the field and you want to be on the field as a receiver, you are going to block. Now, Ja'Cory Barney's not the biggest guy, but I never saw any fear in him last year. I assume Cortez Mills, a little bigger body, is going to be a more physical receiver. But Holgerson wants receivers that are going to go punch somebody and then go get open, and then you get chances. So I find it interesting, those two rooms with new coaches. There's a lot of talent, I think, in the DB room, despite Nebraska losing somebody back to Arizona, Killebrew.
He wasn't a loss.
Yeah, but you have somebody who played in a Power 4 conference, I guess. But I think those are going to be highly, highly competitive rooms to watch in the spring. I love Mills' game though. Watching him, I think he's a big time playmaker.
To me, though, the guy we're not talking about enough is in the wide receiver room, and it's Dane Key. Yeah, and I think Gary just saw the Huskers' inability to break a full court press, which was gross. Six turnovers to 0 right now. Nebraska is not on the good side of that statistic.
That's so bad.
Yeah, that's gross. But Dane Key's a guy we're not talking about enough. That addition, that's a guy that, based on his career at Kentucky, with 1 year left, you're forecasting him as a second or third round pick in next year's NFL draft. That's about where he's sitting whenever you look at the way too early big boards. That's a guy we're not talking about enough, considering when was the last time Nebraska had a guy like that? Trey Palmer went much later than that. He probably should have been a second or a third round pick, but you saw the impact he had on that Husker offense. Dane Key's a guy that will get open consistently and be that safety valve, that favored target for Dylan Raiola. Is he going to be as explosive as potentially a Cortez Mills or a Ja'Cory Barney? No, likely not. Is he going to have the catch radius of a guy like Jamal Banks? No, likely not. But he's going to just do so many little things well. That I think that's a big addition to bring to Dylan Raiola. He's just a guy that's going to be consistent. Don't think he leads the nation in receiving. Don't think he leads the nation in catches. But just a guy you can always turn to. That's a big addition.
Hunter is somebody I'm excited for. The Cal guy. The red shirt freshman that transferred in. Love his body type, his speed, his ability to track the football, and I got basketball going here out of my left. Sorry, but no, I saw him really make some plays against Miami when the U went out there, and that was kind of a shootout comeback for them. It was impressive with what he was able to do.
Can I tell you who they're most? Well, I'm not. It's like picking your favorite kid, Schmitty.
I have one. You could say
I was being fair.
Favorite dog, I guess.
They are. So Dane Key, of course, to be at the top of the food chain. Hunter, of course, Barney returning. They are elated for Hardly Gilmore.
Really?
They are. They think that is a steal from Kentucky.
Well, that's the guy that
he won't be in the conversation like on the street corner when you're talking about wide receivers, because that's what we do in Nebraska is we meet people on the street corner. We talk about wide receivers. But his upside actually might be might be higher than most in that room, and if not all.
Well, I referenced Trey Palmer earlier. That's the guy that's got the most Trey Palmer in him, don't you think? Like, he's got the speed, he's got the ability to beat a team over the top. That's the guy you look at.
So when it started to roll that Shorts was going to leave Kentucky and come to Nebraska and be with Holgorsen again, Kentucky didn't think they could keep Key because they thought they were going to lose Key no matter what. So they were like, okay, that's probably going to be a follow. But then they started to collect their resources. And you remember, you got Vince Morrow there who, I wish the administration in Nebraska would have been more comfortable keeping Vince Morrow here when he was under Pelini, because I think he could have done some damage. But I, of course, was so afraid of somebody getting in the weeds like Vince did. Well, now Vince has got a bag to sell. You remember he took
Yes,
remember the Kentucky, we had that little stretch of not only Wandale but a couple other guys who went to Kentucky. But so when Key leaves and Shorts leaves, they circled the troops and they were going to try and hold people into that wide receiver room. And all of a sudden the Kentucky football collective started to find some cash. And they thought that Gilmore would stay because they told Gilmore that he was going to be the dude. And Gilmore wasn't comfortable with the unknown at Kentucky. And he had a great relationship with Shorts, who, when Gilmore got injured and didn't play at the beginning of the year, Shorts stuck with him. And he said, it's okay. They developed a great relationship. And so for Kentucky people inside that program are pissed that Gilmore left to come to Nebraska. And yeah, I always look at, is a fan base upset that they lost a coordinator, a coach, or a player to a fellow school? Or do they say, hey, I'm Husker Gamecock. You guys are getting a good one in Satterfield. I hope you enjoy it. It's the best thing that's ever happened to us in Columbia.
Hey, Kentucky got Craig Skinner. You got him a volleyball national title. It's just, reparations for that.
Hey, right now, can I give a quick update here? I don't know where you guys are in the game. This game
16
is perfect.
to 12, three ball just hit for Nebraska.
Inside to Morgan, little floater off the glass. Nobody drew the foul. This is the perfect game right now for Nebraska. It's not a track meet. It's super ugly. It's probably very quiet in there. You can hear Kent and Jake, and it's ugly basketball. This actually may be perfect for Nebraska. This might be like the UCLA game. Because it's not, because Maryland's not hitting threes. It's not a track meet. It's not exchanging threes for twos. You never know. You never know.
They're still within striking distance after the under 16.
Maryland's treating that area inside the arc like they're playing the game of lava. They just don't want to go in there. They don't want to get their feet burned. So everything is on the outside perimeter.
Free throws good.
That's what the game is now in the NBA too. But
Bill, did you play that as a little kid in Fairbury?
Well, we had volcanic activity down there, so yeah.
I would say every time they had a shift change at Fairbury brand hot dogs, yes.
I found out from Bill and Julie that there was a factory down in Fairbury back in the day that made all the starter coats.
Yeah.
Like, back in the early 90s, we all had starters coats, or I don't know, Sharpie, if you did or not, but I had a
Swingsters.
I had a starter's coat. It wasn't the pullover, but it was the full zip up that was, awesome.
Aren't they making a comeback?
Kinda. Yeah. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Yeah.
I mean, my buddy Iowa Russ has a Lions one he got a hold of, but apparently if I would have been smart enough to drive down to Fairbury 35 years ago, I could have had my pick. Could have gone Carolina one day, Duke the next, Bulls, Huskers. Elijah, did you ever dive into the pool of starters coats?
I was just going to go there. I'm not sure if it's actually starter brand or if it's one of the replicas, but authentic 1990s team issued Husker starter jacket is currently in my closet. It's a double XL, so it's tough to wear. It was like a defensive lineman's, but I got it. Authentic. And you know what happened whenever I first put it on? I found a whole bunch of sand in the pockets. So I'm not sure if it's true or not, but I say it's from the Orange Bowl. Some Husker player was wearing it on the beach. They got sand in the pockets and never wore it again. So
check the other pocket. There's a lighter.
or there's a condom.
Yeah.
I lived in Florida. I know what happens on the beach.
The starter kit.
We also outfitted every softball coach and football coach with those amazingly durable polyester shorts.
Oh, the bike shorts.
Yeah, we used to export those from Fairbury too.
Really?
Damn. How'd you guys ever lose Fairbury brand hot dogs? How did you let West Point take it away? You guys were the hub of activity and economic progress in the state of Nebraska.
Yeah, we don't want to get into that. It's political. Life's never been the same.
For the love of Bill Doleman and John Beerbaum. My God.
Nice pull. See the Fresno State Boston College kid?
Went to Boston College.
He played. I remember because I think I had just started in school, and we were doing like a state tournament game for KLIN, and I was enamored with the nickname, the Jeffs. And then here comes a kid, because didn't he wear 0, Bill, in high school? Yeah, and he was like great. And I'm like, wow, hello. And so I was like, John Beerbaum is my like spirit animal.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yes. All right.
Maryland missed a free throw. That's a 3-point ball game. Huskers are covering. What was the first half line, Elijah?
I don't know. I'd assume it was either 4 or 5, considering the 9.5 line.
One of our, let me give him credit. One of our streamers said that FanDuel jumped it to 12. Coach Brandon chasing 10 wins. DraftKings already moved the line to 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We'll wind it down as football to watch, hoops to pray about, and college football playoff, fellas. I think we've all kind of touched on how nice tomorrow night's going to be with the brands that are involved. I hope for football fans' sake this thing's competitive, and I think it can be. But Ohio State, if they don't jack around and just go in with what they're good at, that's attacking the edges and using their skill people, fellas, they're overwhelming. They are so good if they don't get in their own way. And maybe that's how tomorrow night shakes out. My only hope for the Fighting Irish is that their defensive line can get after Howard, and Howard is not as sharp as he has tended to be. He's both the quarterbacks can ruin it tomorrow night for either team. I think if the defenses have their way.
Yeah, I was going to mention that about the quarterbacks real quick, Gary. This is not a game where you're going into a championship game, be it in the NFL or college football, where there's a lot of focus. Like the quarterbacks are the marquee players. They're nice stories. Riley Leonard is a great story with what he did at Duke and going to Notre Dame, and very high character guy. Will Howard at K-State goes to Ohio State, but this is not one of those games where it's Lamar against Mahomes or Manning against Brady. These are two teams playing for the national championship, and there's something refreshing, I think, about that, because you really can't, other than maybe Smith at Ohio State, Henderson, but really, I think if there's one real star play, it's Smith, the freshman receiver at Ohio State. But other than that, it's back to two teams playing for the national title, and I think that's really great for college football, and then the two institutions.
Quickly here, Andrew Morgan. It's the Andrew Morgan game right now. But back to the national championship game.
Oh, can I drop one more thing on Morgan? I'm going to give you a little Nebraska will pursue the 5th year for Andrew Morgan.
Good.
Yes.
Do you play Mast and Morgan together if you get that 5th year?
Oh yes.
Do you have one and two off the bench? And interesting possibilities there.
Both. Morgan, great baseline move, reverse layup, make a steal, dunk, and Nebraska's tied up right now. Let's get to the war horse, Elijah.
But back to back to the national championship. To me, it's a game. The only way Notre Dame wins this game, and they got a couple freshmen starting on the offensive line, so it's going to be tough. But the only way they win this game is if they absolutely dominate in the trenches, both offensive line and defensive line. That's the way they got to do it. I think Ohio State's capable enough to give their skill position guys open lanes, to give Will Howard enough time to throw the football, to give him time to just say, screw it, Jeremiah Smith's down there somewhere. I don't see Notre Dame winning this game, but if they do, they have to put in work on the offensive and defensive lines. They need to control that and control that thoroughly. So I don't see it happening. That's their route to victory. I got Ohio State winning this one just because the skill talent is too great, and I think their lines of scrimmage can be good enough.
Yeah, I think the team that has better talent wins, and I love what Marcus Freeman is doing, and I mean I like watching them play because he always has his team prepared. Mm-hmm. Even against Northern Illinois. I mean, we give credit. Northern Illinois played really good in the day they won in South Bend, but he had them prepared to deal with failure, and look at what it did for him the rest of the year. But they're always prepared in all three phases. But like we were talking about with the Detroit Lions and injuries, I mean, you lose your left tackle. I mean, there might be too many injuries for Notre Dame to overcome, and Ohio State has the better talent. My hesitation on this game not being a blowout is, man, there are more guys on Notre Dame's side where I say, man, they got to have the game of their life. That guy's got to have the game of his life. He's got to have the game of his life. I don't do that with Ohio State. To say if Ohio State needs to win, Jeremiah Smith has to have the game of his life. Riley Leonard has to have the game of his life. So that's why Ohio State is the more talented team. But, there's three phases, and you never know what happens like in special teams. I do want to point out, people are talking about when Nebraska was against Florida, and Bill will remember this. It was funny about that game because they did a media event where Nebraska media and Florida media were together. It was like at a golf course, but we weren't playing golf. We were having like a social. But we rode a bus together. And I don't know if you were on this, Bill, because you were more with the team. The Florida media were like, boy, wait till you guys see Florida play. They're going to blow Nebraska out. And all of us were like, I remember Ken Hamilton looking at me, and I'm just, I'm still in college, and I'm covering this incredible football team. And he looked at me, and he had this strange look. And I said, they haven't seen Nebraska play. They're talking like Florida, wait till Werfel and the Florida speed. I mean, it's really going to cause problems for Nebraska. And Kenny and I were talking. I'm like, they haven't seen Nebraska play. Nebraska doesn't look like the old farm boys back in the day. They're a friggin' wagon. And look what happened the next day. I don't see that happening tomorrow night. But you never know. I mean, that's why they play the games, I guess. But I thought that was, Florida people were delusional about that game in Nebraska. But Nebraska was good. I mean, Nebraska was incredible.
I think the reality of Ohio State's 1-2 punch with Junkins and Henderson they're so balanced. I mean, that's the thing. If you're Notre Dame, what do you load up on? What do you stop? And their defensive line's been a real strength. The other thing with Howard, what I've loved about Chip Kelly's use of Howard, at least last game, and you've seen it from time to time, is how they'll do misdirection, yes, but his mobility in the pocket to roll or half roll and then throw back is going to get the wideouts and has gotten wideouts open. And that's something that'll really be a issue for the Irish secondary if they are off balance. Sagin from downtown.
I know.
From Baltimore. Good Lord.
No kidding, right?
Hey, so Nebraska has 18 of their 27 points are off the bench. And Ulis is actually kind of giving him good minutes here.
He's playing good ball.
This is I don't know. If given the atmosphere, if Nebraska gets up and can stay there, this is not a crowd. This is not a crowd that's going to rally the Terps. Okay.
No.
Nebraska knows they're fighting for their life today. I mean, that's the aura you got here. So
this seems good. Well, what happened last week? We're watching the game. We're like, not worth watching Husker basketball. Just keep it rolling. We actually got to get to this game now.
Fare thee well. We love you. Thank you for checking in with the Sunday Live Average Joe Sports Show. And that's Gary Sharp, Bill Doleman, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Like and subscribe the Average Joe Sports Show on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and the AJ Sports Pod. Keep those subscriptions coming.
Oh, God, the shooting in this game is terrible.
Yeah, a little bit. A little blindfold and cigarettes, So we'll be back at you midweek. And thanks for tuning in to the Average Joes.